His name, William Brodie, a builder and cabinet maker by trade. Nicknamed the Deacon, Brodie was considered one of Edinburgh's most reputable businessmen. A hard-working, impeccable craftsman, he was head of the Masons Guild and a member of the City Council. Above all, however, Brodie was a pillar of respectability. But as night fell, Brodie, like Stevenson's fictional Mr. Hyde, assumed a far more unsavory identity. One that felt at home in the sleazy sections of town. Here, Brodie, with other members of his gang, planned a series of daring robberies that baffled the good citizens of Edinburgh. Not content with the dark clothing usually favored by cat burglars, William Brodie audaciously flaunted himself in white. For years, Brodie and his gang of thieves burglarized at will the stately mansions of Edinburgh's elite.
When Brodie was alive, the Royal Mile was quite something. It was probably the most densely packed bit of land in Europe, and long after the rest of Europe had cleaned up their act, Edinburgh remained a very medieval kind of town. At one point it was estimated that something like 80,000 people were crammed into a little mile-long strip. The closes were very dark, the closes were very sinister places. In fact, the Royal Mile was an extremely violent area, despite the fact that it was the central part of Edinburgh. And the grass market especially, that was an absolute den of iniquity. He was also a locksmith. That gave him access to very rich people's houses. He was able to make impressions of their keys, he was able to mess around with their doors and locks, and that meant he could come back at night and rob them. A slight man, he had a scar down one side of his face and apparently a lazy eye as well. So how he managed to get two mistresses to bear him so many children is beyond me, but he had to have charm.
Then one night, the Deacon's luck ran out. A robbery he planned was foiled at the last moment. After that, no more doors opened for the wily William Brodie. He was eventually arrested, tried, and sentenced to death. This man, who was a gentleman by day and a thief by night, was hanged about 100 yards from here. In a way, he died by his own hand. The gallows that once stood there were built by Edinburgh's master craftsman, William Brodie. A century later, Robert Louis Stevenson modeled his most famous literary creation on the lurid adventures of this former solid citizen. Robert Louis Stevenson, the author who wrote such classics as Treasure Island and Kidnapped, was fascinated by this dual nature. It inspired him to write one of the 19th century's great stories, The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And he wrote it here, in this house, in Edinburgh, Scotland. Brought about by a mysterious potion, the terrifying transformation of kindly Dr. Jekyll into the diabolical Mr. Hyde lies at the heart of the tale. In this particular version, he's played by Jack Palance. But the story was more than dark fable. Stevenson based it on the exploits of a man who actually lived here in Edinburgh in the 18th century.
Verse 24, stop judging according to appearance, but judge with righteous judgment. Judge rightly. Apply the evidence. Make the right verdict concerning the claims I've made. They had spent their whole life judging on appearance. That's what hypocrites do. That's what they sell. That's what they produce. That's the nature of hypocrisy. Stop, Jesus said, doing that. Judge righteously. That's a message to every person. Every person. There's no middle ground. You either embrace Jesus as Savior or Lord, or you don't. One promises heaven, the other promises hell. No middle ground.